What is up, guys? Episode 2 here for what did I call it?
This is 3. This is 3.
It's 2.
Is it 2?
It's 2.
Oh.
It's caffeine, carbs, caffeine, caffeine, carbs, and kilos. I struggle.
Yeah.
This is Matt. He is our head trainer here.
Howdy.
Coach. Does a whole bunch of other stuff for us. We got some topics this time we're going to get into instead of me and Skylar just kind of talking back and forth, which should hopefully go well. I've known Matt a while, so hopefully we can also give and take pretty similarly too, which would be pretty nice. But first, I'll let Matt introduce himself, and then we'll get into it. So, Matt, go ahead.
My name is Matt. I am the personal trainer / coach here at One Up. I'm an Aquarius. I like long walks, and I'm a big fan of mochi.
Interestingly enough. All right. I thought you were going to go more on the lifting side, but he
went, and I also
completely different.
I also compete USAPL powerlifting, and then same with a lot of my athletes. They do that as well, along with USPA. Who knows? Maybe I might switch to USPA or WRPF soon as well.
How long have you been competing?
Oh, I want to say I always have to really think about it because I always forget. But I started lifting truly, seriously, when I was about 21-ish. And then I started competing about that same time too. So I take that back. I started seriously lifting around the age of 20. And then I think my first competition was between the ages of 21 and 22. And then I kind of competed at a rate of one competition per year for the following 2 years after that. And then I kind of started doubling up and then did a few collegiate nationals. And then, yeah, here I am.
Fair enough.
So
you're kind of getting rid of the whole stigma that you have to have been in high school sports and you have to start lifting when you're really young. And I heard something this morning from Tim Thibodeau, I think it was. It was a really hot take. I saw it on his Instagram this morning. It literally said, no matter what you do as a powerlifter, you will never stand up to the powerlifters that had a sports background, especially football. And it was a really hot take. And if you would have read some of the comments, a lot of people were super pressed. And I found that, honestly, I was pretty upset by it too, because that feels really stupid and it feels really exclusive, almost like you can't do well in powerlifting without having some sports background.
Yeah, I think that is definitely a hot take, and I definitely think it's not true in any way, shape, or form. I did one sport throughout high school, and I did it for 1 year too. I was proficient at it, but it was just track and field, and that was it. I just wanted to finish off high school with doing at least one sport, and that's what I did. But beyond that, I don't really have much of a really sporty background, and I don't think anyone else really needs to either. If you have the interest and the drive to get into powerlifting, then that in itself is enough. Heck, that kind of makes me think of people that have that sort of mindset going into it. It's we're these athletic alphas. This is what we're going in with. No one's going to beat us. No, I guarantee you there's going to be some dude that's never played sports before too that has the genetic potential to wipe you guys across the fucking floor. Yeah. Without a doubt. Sorry for me cussing, but
it's a gym podcast.
But there's so many different people out there, so many different genetic potentials, so many people that haven't tapped into it and never really were exposed in younger years, and then this is their outlet. Next thing you know, they're crushing people who have the most well-endowed athletic background. So
yeah. I would say I was definitely upset by that take when I heard it this morning, because it just sounds way too exclusive, and that's definitely not what the powerlifting community is.
No.
That actually brings me into one of my first topics too. Within our gym, I think there's an intimidation factor. One, because you see a lot of people lifting super heavy, and two, because it's kind of grungy, it's a garage gym. But then you get in here and you realize it's more of an inclusive community, and primarily what it is powerlifters and lifters that lift heavy, or if they're not powerlifters, so they say, are just all introverts looking for an escape, and so they're usually some of the nicest people you've met. But I remember when I was looking at this gym, I was lifting at the Y at the time, because it's similar to you. I didn't start powerlifting until I came on with you literally a year ago, maybe a year and a half, for a little random stuff online. that's neither here nor there. I was lifting at the Y prior, and I kept seeing Instagram ads for this place, and I kept telling myself, "Oh, I don't want to go. It's full of meatheads, and it'd be too scary." And eventually, I finally told myself I would just go do it, take a tour, see what happens, and
Mhm.
the intimidation factor is definitely there. But the longer you're here and kind of stick to yourself for a while, then you realize people are just kind of super nice, and you don't need to worry about it.
And no, it's intimidating from the outside. It's intimidating walking around at first, seeing all the equipment stuff that we have. Some of it's not very commonly used in a lot of other gyms. And there's just the intimidation factor of what would I even do like training here, coming from a general population standpoint. But yeah, beyond that, you spend like a week or two here, and that intimidation factor like goes out the window. Like, obviously, there's going to be the select few that in themselves they hold that intimidating type of bravado to themselves, and we can probably think of a few right off the top of the head.
Yeah, we don't need to get into that.
Yeah,
I think everyone knows that one. Yeah,
but beyond that, though, there's the majority of the people that come here are not intimidating in any way, shape, or form. I would put myself on the very bottom of intimidating. Like, I might walk around with like a RBF, but beyond that, like once you talk to me, it's like a night and day situation. So, and that's all. Like, yeah, we have some socially awkward people here, but heck, what gym doesn't? What place doesn't ever? So, yeah. But when it comes down to also like kind of walk into this gym, sometimes you're looking at some of the rusty things we have and whatnot. You're like, man, should I get a tetanus shot or something before I come in here? But beyond that, no, I think that kind of adds character. There's a lot of people that literally kind of go for that aesthetic on its own. They don't like the nice gyms, those commercial gyms that are like, not saying we're some dirty gym, but it's ones that are just, everything looks brand spanking new. It's all kind of crystal clean, and it's primarily lots of just machines and all that stuff. Like, I don't know, that in itself is kind of like a turnoff for me when it comes to the gym.
Yeah, I actually saw an Instagram reel this morning too. It was two people, and there was like a text over that like their mom was asking, like, "Are you really flying all the way to Houston to go to a gym?" And then immediately I'm like, "They're gonna go to Alpha Land. I'm gonna hate it."
Oh God!
And I was right. They got there. They showed like a quick pano of just the Alpha Land logo walking in. I'm like, are you kidding me?
There's so many gyms in Texas I would go to for Alpha Land.
Corrupted Strength is half a mile away from Alpha Land.
Absolutely. I would love just to go there, and yeah.
And like, I hope Guzman doesn't find this and crucify us by any means, but like, he's a great businessman, but that gym is just overhyped, overdone, and I think it's stupid. Especially, I think it's like $30 day passes.
Well, they have a label, and they go off of that name that they've created. So if people are flying out there, they're probably not worried about the $30 a day pass.
Fair enough, yeah.
So, and it seems like fitness influencers, like the most generic fitness influencers wet dream kind of place.
Yeah,
and that's that kind of brings me into going into USAPL now a little bit, with like kind of everyone's a lot more aesthetic now with how everything is, how everything looks, and everyone has this very like, I don't know, this style that really just, it's more concerned about how you look than anything else, and that is weeding its way into USAPL and a lot of their competitions, just the whole demographic of people who compete. Like, I could care less if your whole ensemble matches. I think, and no one else should care either. Like, you're there to pick something up and put it back down. You're wearing the equipment that works best for you, and it's not a fashion show.
Yeah.
And so that's something that, like, going back to me saying, like, I think I want to go USPA or WRPF, like, I see less of that. Like, I love going to USPA meets.
They're fun meets.
Like, heck, the last one I went to, they had an open bar. Like, that was a field day for me. That was great, but
we were both 21.
Yes. But it was just the excitement with it. Everyone, like how everyone carried themselves. I liked it. I liked it a lot. And even going to like the USPA Pro Raw, that in itself, like seeing those big names and how
Mhm.
humble they are and stuff, like casually talking to Jamal in the restroom, seeing John Hack, seeing how they like really just carry themselves and how they talk to others, how they talk to each other. It really wasn't like I thought it was going to be much more intimidating than it really was.
Mhm.
And I've like ran into like the big names in USPA or USAPL, and half those dudes are just dicks
Yeah.
for no reasons. They just want to look pretty and then be an asshole to everybody.
Yeah. I was
So-
saying, I think the whole social media, everything now has skewed so
Yeah.
many people's views because social media alone and seeing like this boom of powerlifting, especially USAPL, just because it's the easiest entry. I mean, it's a really primarily local thing to get into. Now, I praise them for trying to do more, higher meets, having payouts, and like they're going to be at the Arnold next year. Like that's fantastic for them. But USAPL, I loved it more as like the local meet kind of thing. You could go and make friends and try out a meet for the first time. And I mean that was a whole lot better versus now with social media age, you see everyone competing in USAPL, but then you also see half of them, nearly benching 500 pounds or squatting in the sevens or close to 8, and they're maybe in their I've seen teens doing it, I've seen low 20s doing it, and now with that it really skews everyone's belief that like a 225 bench is still in the top 1% of the
Absolutely.
population, and similar to like a 315 squat and a 315 deadlift, that's still like within decent feats of strength for a human, whereas now social media has skewed it so wide, and all these people that are lifting that, especially on the social media world and within USAPL, half of them is that they think they're now up and above everybody else, and it's so fucked. And I try not to swear too, but in this instance, it is just so fucked.
Fuck. But
yeah.
It definitely is. And if I go, I think the farthest back post that I have on my Instagram is me, I think like deadlifting 365 for like just a couple reps. And I know at that point how I felt specifically, and I was hyped. I felt like I was like the strongest in the gym and that stuff. And like looking back, like what I'm doing now, comparisons to that,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh wow. But at the same time, that is just a stepping stone in your maturity of training, and everyone will go through their own stepping stones. And to disregard like all those big names that are like pulling that and doing that, and then think they're the shit, they started off at the similar stepping stones. And some people might start higher than others, and that's cool. But at this, they still will go through their earlier phases. And I think showing respect to the people that are going through their early phases, the same ones that everyone else has gone through, is crucial. I think it is crucial for their retention and for obviously their own self-esteem, but for like the retention of keeping people in this sport and growing it, those people need to be shown love.
Yeah, I would say my favorite powerlifter right now, Gavin Aiden, he's really good about doing that. Now he's an IPF, and that's a whole other thing we don't need to get into. But like he competes IPF, but he's one of those where it's not silent. He posted on Instagram, but I mean at this point now, social media age and sponsorships and everything like that, you kind of have to. But like he'll post that on social media with a simple caption of the weight and the reps, and then his tags on the bottom. And like he's always got like the funny gym videos where people come up like, hey man, how do you do this? And he's more than willing to help. And my favorite thing is he's so humble about what he posts. And then when people in the comments might say like, I want to be as strong as you someday, or I want to do this to achieve what you're achieving, he will commonly reply to those and say, no, not me, reach higher. And he will literally tell people, don't chase me, chase someone beyond me. And his biggest thing right now is burn your ships, and like it's always been his thing, but like ignore what you've done previous. Don't ignore it completely, but like take what you've done previous and reach beyond. And I really like what he's doing, just with how humble he is and how accepting he is. And I think that's what a lot more people need to really adapt as far as how that goes in social media, because he's one of those guys where he's not, a smaller guy on social media by any means, but he's also not as big as like Russell Orhe. And, not to take anything away from what Russ does. I really hope he doesn't see this because Russ, I watch his videos because they're entertaining, but I also think that Russ is a dick, unfortunately. And people can be mad about that if they want, but if you really look into it, I don't know. He's confident. He's not overly cocky, but he also has that air about him, and it's different than guys like Atwood and Gavin Aiden who are humble and just tell you what they're doing, and then help other people achieve what they want to. So.
And actually, I was just talking to someone recently for a consultation. She was telling me about how she saw Russell literally cut an entire line. It was at the Mega Nats at Vegas. Cut the entire line of people for rack heights. Was just complete dick going into that and everything. And it was just again, I hope he doesn't see this because I'd probably get torn to pieces. But at the same point, it's like, it kind of needs to be exposed. If this actually truly happened, you gotta be held accountable for your actions, especially when you are a figurehead in the community.
Yeah, no
you
kidding.
really need to be held accountable for how you treat others, how you hold yourself, because those younger guys that are going through their stepping stones, they're gonna look at you and they're gonna act like you. Yeah. They're gonna walk around wearing the same clothes as you, doing the same setup as you, and treating people the same as you.
I was saying I don't want to shit on Russ for this long, but he can't go about and have a brand literally called Be Better. It used to be Get Better Today, but now it's the Better brand, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And his big thing is Get Better Today, but you can't have a brand talking about being better in all aspects of your life and then just be a dick. That's not how that works.
Absolutely not. And this also comes up to the point too when you're bringing up I looked up this quote just to make sure I didn't mess it up or anything. But with you going about how Gavin would say that reach beyond me and all this stuff, Socrates quote, no man has the right to be an amateur in life, matter of physical training. It's a shame for a man to grow old without seeing the beauty and strength of which his body is capable. That I hold very true because I would love to see what I am physically capable of. I'd like to get to that one landmark and not be like, oh, I've done 405 for 8 repetitions. I think I'm going to stay there. I think that's a good, cap. No, I want to see if I can do 500 for 8 next. And then after that, I want to see if I can do 600 for 8. I want to see where my body can take me. And I think everyone should have that mindset. Obviously, if there's limiting factors, say you have any sort of immune disorders or metabolic diseases or anything like that that's really pushing you, still push yourself, obviously within reason and not jeopardizing where you're at currently or making things worse. But everyone, I think, in any aspect, and this can be taken out of training too, this can be taken to an academic or just family environment, how capable are you of being a good friend? You can take that into so many different aspects, but I hold it very true to myself in that physical performance realm. I want to see how far I can get. And I would like to see how far I can get naturally, and then who knows, down the road, once that point's reached, where I feel like I've reached that point, might as well mess around with gear a little bit. Obviously, do it under the supervision of a physician, get blood panels done on a regular basis, be very deliberate with it. But I think it's heck, hot take on this, actually. I think in sports, if I know, say, the NFL doing steroids, doing them in the off seasons, that's a pretty common thing. They get flagged for it. They're out for a couple games. But just imagine if everyone was on steroids and they just okay, cool. Everyone has to take this. It's I think that would level out the playing field, and I think that would make sports a lot more fun to watch. It's fair. We watch sports to see people. We watch the professional sports to see people do things that aren't commonly done in those sports. So why not see even more uncommonly done stuff?
Fair. I'll say my only thing with that is if everyone was taking gear, no one would be on gear, and you wouldn't, I don't know. It'd just basically all be a baseline.
Oh yeah, it would create a baseline. We should do that with the XFL. That's what they actually be.
There'd be nothing the feats of strength, raw and tested, would, to me, while Jamal pulling 1102 with just straps and a belt is still phenomenal. Whether or not he's untested or not is still ridiculous. But to me, the raw feats of strength are almost, I don't want to say more impressive, but they almost are at the same time, because all you have is, belt, knee sleeves, and your genetic potential. You
Absolutely.
don't have anything underlying to
Mhm.
help you get there.
And like I said, that's when I feel like an individual has reached the point where they're like, I have no idea how much further I can progress, and how to like really like I don't know quantify that is going to be difficult. There probably will be some more progression after that, but when you feel like you got to the point where it's like I am satisfied where I'm at with this, then fine, by all means. If you still want to keep going to see what your natural potential is too, by all means with that as well. It's just the kind of it's for the freedom of choice in that regard. But seeing Jamal do his stuff, even honestly, seeing that raw would like shake the earth.
Yeah.
But seeing it still done, even on gear, makes a pretty big impact.
Mm-hmm.
And just
especially because the first one that did it, Eddie, was in a deadlift suit and had straps, and he was weighing nearly 400 pounds.
Yeah.
Jamal, I think he pulled it after a meet as a little YOLO pull, so
Mhm.
he was still probably just a little over meet weight, maybe like 245. And just pulled it. Now we can get into the whole sumo versus conventional bullshit that I don't think matters anyway. But yeah, I mean it's just ridiculous.
I will tap into how sumo is different than conventional in some aspects.
Oh, it's in here. Don't worry.
Oh, is it? Okay. Do you want to get to it now, or do you want to wait?
I would say, well, this might actually be a decent segue into some of our topics instead, because I have had so many that we have barely touched on, because now we've just kind of talked back and forth.
Yep.
But like a lot of myths and misconceptions, and I have nutrition and lifting. We'll just get into the lifting currently.
We'll go with that.
Like, the high bar versus low bar, sumo versus conventional, and like your range of motion on bench, like everything in there. Like, you want to be able to lift as much as possible. So whether that means a shorter range of motion on bench, if you're still strong in it, by all means. If you have the leverages and are good at sumo, or need to at least start doing sumo, by all means. I'm not gonna, because sumo's hard. Before I even switched, I pulled 500 conventionally, and then I had a partial tear in my erector, so I was almost forced to switch to save my own back. And like the learning curve with sumo is so much more aggressive because it's so technical. And I think now it's been a year and a half, and like I'm pulling more conventional, but also at the same time I've been working. I changed my sumo setup literally the other day, not like entirely, but like was watching proper cues and doing different cueing and messing around with just how I set up, not necessarily my foot placement, but in general the setup. And so I mean, it's been a year and a half, and I'm still messing around with it because it's so technical. And versus conventional, like it's impressive because it's conventional. I mean, it looked more impressive anyway. You're standing in front and picking something up, but like, yeah, I don't know. You can get into that a little bit more if you want to, Mike.
Well, I think they're both impressive in their own ways, shape or form. I think with sumo, you can tolerate a lot more volume when it comes to training overall, because the loads spread out a little bit more amongst muscle groups. So that's why I go back and forth. You'll see videos of me doing both, and I try to keep both actually pretty strong for that reason, because I believe the carryover is quite relevant. I think they have, if you can keep them very close together, by all means. If one's like, for me, I think my sumo is 5 pounds above my conventional for a PR currently. But like I try to keep those just neck and neck.
Yeah.
And that it keeps it easy when it comes to programming for myself in that regard too, because I'm just like, cool, I can just carry over these percentages just as if I was training with conventional. But I know I'm going to be able to handle like that 85% for 5 to 8 repetitions a lot better than I would be able with the conventional. And that's the only reason is the big fatigue factor of it.
Yeah. I was saying, and sumo is so technical. If you're technically sound, it's so much easier not to get fatigued too. Just because it's your technique that gets the weight up. Now, you still need to have the strength to actually do it, but your technique is what assists you in getting there. And that's also why sumo, I think, is just as hard, because you need to have that technique locked in. Otherwise, you're not getting it anywhere. Or if you get it off the ground from brute strength, chances are you won't lock it out. At least from what I've seen.
Yeah, and I think in my opinion, if you screw up the wedge and everything before the pole or the like couple inches off the ground, it just wasn't right. it's harder to push through that lift in a sumo standpoint than it would be a conventional.
Yeah, I would say because conventional, you can just
You can
raw
just,
dog the shit out of it and hope for the best.
yeah,
It might
yeah.
hurt something, but I mean, it'll go better than sumo will.
And there are I think when it comes to wedging for both, wedging for sumo is definitely a lot more technical. Obviously, with foot placements, rotation of the legs, feet, finding where your hips best are before the pole, and where they wedge in the best, and then how your torso is positioned too with it. You can though bring that into a conventional point as well, because there was one client I was working with, and I've been noticing a lot of in powerlifting, a lot of kids when they get started in powerlifting or anything, they have this kind of wider conventional stance.
Mm-hmm.
It's not anywhere close to what a frog stance sumo would be, but it's a wide conventional stance. And that in a point, it's like, yeah, you have to change your footing in that regard, and then from there, you kind of have to almost teach them where those hips go from that point, and then obviously it goes into the bracing and everything like that, and where you start. But yeah, once you get basically the hips, I think, really in place for both of them. But when you get the feet in place for conventional, hips in place, and then you get that wedge developed, it's really kind of just game on with the conventional.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you want to make sure that your shoulders are kind of relatively over the bar, similar with the sumo. And there's just a lot of things that carry over from one another. So the only thing that when I started doing sumo that really just kind of sketched me out was the groin.
Yeah.
That is just the weirdest thing to get used to. Obviously, with your legs being so abducted or adducted in and then pulling, your groin doesn't get a whole lot of tension through it.
I remember when I first started, like that entire groin out, even into the other side of the hip. That's adductors, right? Or is that abductors on the outside?
Ad.
Yeah.
Yep.
From like the adductors and groin all the way out to the abductors on the outside. Like my hips were sore when I first started for like 2-3 months.
Mm-hmm. I noticed too when I run a block with my sumo, my hips pop so much more. Like I'll wake up in the morning, I'll just like rotate a leg or something, just I'm like, huh, cool. But when I'm in through like heavy my conventional training and everything, that's like not even a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So
I was saying we can go into it a little bit too. I 100% believe that you should train both because I think both have a carryover into both. Where sumo is going to help you technically and with a lot more hip strength and a lot more learning to use your quads, where conventional is going to give you a little bit more of that back strength to help you lock out your sumo, really, or at least I think so. And like keeping them both the same, I definitely think is not necessarily the same, because I mean you might be stronger one way or the other just because your leverages, but I think doing them,
you're working on the weaknesses.
Yeah,
one's going to work on something else than the other is, and that's going to be for lots of variations of lifts. My favorite variation that I've been sticking to with sumo poles, obviously you've been exposed to them, a few others have been exposed to them, but the tempo sumo poles.
Yeah.
It's
4-1-4. They hurt.
Well, yeah, it's not even the eccentric, the concentric. The whole thing's tempoed. So that I love them so much, just for the fact that, especially if you can do them with the obviously keeping the load a lot more on the lighter realms, or looking at maybe starting with 50% and then going up towards close to 80%, depending on what the rep range is. But going with beltless as well, really teaching you to kind of that endurance of the brace, and then it gives a lot more exposure to the technique of it, especially if you're going into sumo and that's what you plan on using for your actual competition lift. Then it just gives you so much more exposure to the technique and bits and points of the range of motion that maybe needs to be altered, or just gives you that time to really feel where it feels appropriate. And that's why I really like them quite a bit. My big thing is the bracing aspect with them. That's why I do it with myself, because my sumo right now isn't very wonky at the moment, but it's, who knows, maybe unintentionally I kind of developed my sumo a little bit better just by incorporating those, but that wasn't my intention for myself. It was just purely the kind of bracing and the endurance of that.
Yeah, and what was I? Oh yeah, I think those tempo sumos are really good for, you're mentioning it, technique work too,
Mm-hmm.
because you're forced. You can do your setup to begin with, and then as soon as you shoot through, you almost really have to stop and like really focus on where your wedge is and how to continue that technique
Mm-hmm.
all the way through. And I don't know if Skylar could put my a video or a short clip of my deadlift prior to doing the tempos, where when I shot through, the bar actually, like when it came off the ground, moved away from my shin, so it completely threw me out of position.
Mm-hmm.
And just getting it back to my shins and reinitiating the pull, from that point I had lost nearly every ounce of energy I had
Mm-hmm.
just to try and pull. So hopefully he can put that up there so people can kind of understand what I'm talking about. But doing these tempo sumos, I was the other day I skipped them and opted for some speed work instead because I wasn't having a great day and I didn't want to focus on slowness.
Yeah.
Sometimes it happens. But I noticed, like, with that tempo work, my just technique in general was beyond where it was even just 6 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say there's definitely different ways of training everything, and I think people need to really focus on the stuff that hurts, the stuff that might be boring.
Mm-hmm.
Also, could be the stuff that's going to make you much better in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, don't avoid your GPP kits.
That you remember me into another thing. My upper body GPP, fantastic. I can handle the winning warm ups on my upper body before I lift, and I feel fantastic. Lower body, no, I will be trashed, and
No.
that is something that now we're 10 and a half weeks out of my next meet, and so I'm just kind of fucked on that side of things. I'll just have to throw it in as much as I can, but know that it's not going to be as good, and then maybe the next block will actually really focus on it too.
Yeah.
Because maybe Matt Wenning talks about it too. He's like, maybe you are strong enough, but you're just out of shape, and out of shape means so many different things. I mean, for that, like maybe in a meet, yeah, you can squat, but then your lower body GPP is so bad that your entire nervous system takes the brunt of all that, and then you go into your bench, and it's trash compared to like a single bench day in training, where a single bench day in training might be 15 kilo higher than in meet because your squat took so much out of you because you're out of shape.
That's very true. I think overall fitness should play a bigger role in the powerlifting training regimen. I know you've been thinking about doing the strongman aspect too, and I'm like, and that you look at a lot of their modalities that they do. They're pretty they're big guys, but they're doing a lot of endurance stuff with heavy loads.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of looking at it's like you don't have to look at taking away all these like heavy training modalities. Like you can still keep them intertwined. Obviously, looking at different variations, like a commonly used one, like farmer carries. Obviously, you have multiple spectrums being worked out in that. You got your grip strength, depending on how you disperse the load. You can work on stabilization, and then also just aerobic capacity as well.
Yeah.
So, but we should probably get into.
I would say that, and we can kind of work backwards on what we've talked about, because that goes back into kind of into like a perfect training regimen and understanding that doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. Perfect training is what's perfect for you.
Mm-hmm.
What's perfect for you is not going to be perfect for the next person.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no such thing as a perfect training regimen, no matter how hard we all chase it. 'Cause we all have to change it. We all have to adjust for our body styles, our body, our muscular endurance, everything like that. And so perfect training in my opinion, doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm. And I would agree with you on that. I think it's when starting a person on programming, you kind of want to throw something a wee bit more generalized at them. You don't want to get truly super specific straight out the gate unless you're what injuries they've had or mobility issues they've had in the past, and then you just want to address them right there. But if you're just learning about the athlete or client that you're programming for, you're going to probably start off with something that's a little bit more generalized and see what they are proficient in and what they struggle in. And then basically going from there, you are going to change it upon the individual's needs. So there is a base point where it's like, yeah, generalized programming is probably acceptable, but then it has to change. It's going to probably change unless everyone was similar and you're in a vacuum, which obviously is not the case.
Yeah.
Things are going to change.
I say the other thing, if Skylar can put up the screenshot of the text I took the other day after I missed my squat, that'd be really funny too.
Yeah.
He said the same thing. He texted me after I texted him my squat that didn't go well. I wanted 5 and I got 4. And I was upset, and he's like, we don't train in a vacuum, so sometimes shit don't go like it's supposed to. What did I respond with? Because I think I sent you the screenshots. So I'm gonna be close.
Oh geez, what did Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, training isn't done in a vacuum, so shit don't go how we'd like it to. And I was still upset, so I said I want shit to shit like it's supposed to shit. I don't know, that just made me laugh for some reason. But training is going to train how it wants to and how your body wants to, and there are so many outside factors that you can never control them all. And so that's a big thing with a lot of people too, is they want to blindly just follow their program, and if they don't get it, they're or if they have to blindly follow everything that's written in every single way versus auto-regulation being what's more necessary. So, I mean,
I will auto-regulate till the day I die.
I think everyone needs to auto-regulate, because as nice it is to be able to follow your program like week to week, increasing the weight where it's supposed to be and have it all make sense, some weeks are not going to be there. You might you might have a cold like I did a couple weeks ago and I had to adjust things accordingly, or you might have only slept 4 hours the night before, got up late, you didn't eat breakfast, or so many different things that are going to affect your training that day. Maybe you're still sore from 2 days ago. So and that soreness, no matter how much you try to work it out, maybe like your low back sore, so when you're bracing, maybe your brace is going to be sore because it's trying to take on the extra load that your low back can't handle because those muscles are still fatigued. And then there's so many different ways, and I went down a weird path, went on a tangent on that one, but like training is not linear, and auto-regulation needs to be more prevalent in so many people's training.
Absolutely. And that's why I've taken kind of a liking to doing people's, like, sitting down weekly and doing everyone's week or 2 weeks out. You have a certain time frame, but I'll sit there and I'll only do the week coming up or the week after that as well, just because I like to read through the notes. If they put down notes or anything like that, they take advantage of that opportunity of open communication that those programs provide. I like to really use those in regards to how progressions are going, how things are feeling, and all that stuff. And I like taking that too. It's like, heck, if they succumb to an injury like 5 weeks in, they're working like a 12, 16-week block, I can modify something within like coming up or within that week, whatever needs to be done. But I like taking advantage of that, because then kind of, if you're just planning and you have everything spread out for that duration of time, be 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10, 12, 16, so on and so forth, you have everything planned out there. You have to adjust all of that stuff that you already put in there from that one point of adjustment all the way out. And this just makes it easier from the programmer standpoint. And it also it provides an aspect too. It's some people I think like to really look forward in their programs, like, oh, I'm going to hit this or I'm going to do that, and they get super excited and everything. I kind of like to leave them in the dark about that.
That's not even leaving them in the dark. It's forcing them to auto-regulate at that point too.
Yeah, it's I like to leave them in the dark about that, just for the fact that I want them to focus on what they're doing now. And what they're doing now is the most important. What we're striving for is important, but what they're currently doing is the most important. That is what we're going to use to get to where that end goal is. And truth be told, you don't know where that end goal is truly going to be. You can have a rough range that's estimated, and however you estimate that, if it works, it works. If it's kind of a little skewed, then by all means. But if you're taking advantage of going step by step, you'll get to that end point that's meant to happen.
Yeah, I was saying touching on that, and we can get in a little bit on the auto-regulation and like the mental aspects of lifting in a second, but like it's also good to have that quadrennial plan and have something you want to achieve later, but you still need to be now where it's 1 rep, 1 set, 1 day at a time to get where you want to be. Yes, you can look forward to wanting to be here but you need to take the proper steps to get there today.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I 100% would. I have adopted that for a couple people that I program for too. It's just a week and see how they go. So that way, especially if you're trying new things,
Mm-hmm.
you can't program for 6 weeks. If you're trying something new in week one and they can't adjust to it well, or it's complete shit for them, or they struggle, then suddenly you're going back 5 weeks back, and you're like, well, shit, now I got to go all the way through here again.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I definitely think week at a time is definitely good, and like I said earlier, forces you to auto regulate too.
Mm-hmm.
And then with that auto regulation, going into like the mental aspects of lifting, and we can start into like just the general population, general fitness, and like learning how to push yourself, and then we can get into mental aspects of competing, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
some people like myself where coming to the gym kind of, I don't want to say it saved my life, it might have.
Yeah.
And we can get into that if we want to, because I don't believe there's a stigma in mental health. That's fine. Well, there is, but I don't. Yeah. Anyway, so we'll go into like general population, general fitness, and learning how to push yourself and be mentally strong. I think is huge. And you can.
Yeah. Well, general fitness and mental health are like just getting into the gym. Starting off however you start off. It's starting off. It's okay not to be okay. It's okay to get in the gym, push yourself, and not feel like you're truly like fulfilling yourself in any way or anything like that. It's a process. Your mental health changes at a very slow rate. Like you'll have your ups and downs. Heck, if you're bipolar, you're gonna have those manic episodes where it's gonna be night and day, different days of the week. But the whole of it is slowly progressing, and that in regards to training, there is a positive impact. Studies show it time and time again, but it takes time for that to be achieved. And that's where it kind of comes back to the whole desensitizing us to seeing people that are doing these awesome feats of strength. Like, yeah, people are starting off that don't really have the best confidence. Their self-esteem is just trash. That's a negative impact for them. And obviously, the people that are posting that stuff don't have that intention, but it's a negative impact on those individuals that are just starting off, and they need to know that those people that they're watching had those stepping stones. Heck, they might have had even worse mental health problems than they currently do now. Mm-hmm. That doesn't get shown a lot, and it doesn't need to be, because that's a lot of people's personal issues. Obviously, promoting mental health awareness and all that, and being being open about struggling with it, I think is a very brave and honorable thing in its own. And the general population, usually when they're doing it, they're primarily doing it for aesthetics. From my whole personal training career that I've had, everyone's just going in for aesthetics. I love to hear the people that throw strength out before the aesthetics. They care more about the strength, because especially when you're first getting started, that's what's going to accumulate quicker, is the strength. Those neuromuscular connections are just going to grow stronger, the junctions grow stronger, and then the amount of recruitment increases, so on and so forth. And that will happen at such a quicker rate. Wow, that was just, words are hard. Yeah. Such a quicker rate than the development of the aesthetics in themselves. And so that I think also kind of like pins people down a little bit too. It's like, I'm not seeing the change I want or anything like that. It's like, well, just don't care about it. Don't look at the scale all the time. You can use the mirror as the reference if you want to, but just don't focus on that. And if you're coming into it with some severe mental health, just walking in there, doing your thing, that already you're winning the battle against yourself. Yeah. And that's all it is the battle against yourself and your thoughts and whatever your upbringing was or anything like that. That's your biggest, like it's commonly said all the time, the biggest competition is yourself. It is so fucking true.
Mm-hmm. I'll say, definitely what I've noticed when I started is my mental health was in the can when I first started, at least training seriously. I've been training since I was 16, technically, but like actually heavy lifting, actually putting myself into a program, following it, and doing, everything blocked out. since then, I've the strength increases alone for me were enough. My confidence slowly started to build, and my depressive episodes would be fewer and far between. And that's there's words are hard.
They really are.
Yeah, I just think that the mental aspects with lifting, you learn the better you're getting at it, and the more you're able to do, and the happy you are with the progress you're seeing, the better off you're going to be. And then it also makes you a little mentally tougher too, where you can handle more stuff thrown at you. If someone's trying to degrade whatever you're doing or discredit whatever you're trying to do, the work you've put in, the progress you've had personally, and it's easier to ignore them. And at least for me personally, that's one of the biggest things I've found.
Absolutely.
Not only that, the mental toughness also gives you the ability to push yourself in the gym and push your limits, where like sets of 8 fucking suck, especially when you're squatting. And like when you gave me this block, it was mid block, and now it's my own fault for having a decent squat. But trying to do sets of 8 with 405, you get to rep 5, and this goes back to my GPP issue that doesn't matter. My lower body GPP is bad, but
I totally just hit that. I hope that didn't just mess. Okay,
yeah, it's fine as long as the green light's still on though. That's what I want to check. Yep. Oh, amazing. Anyway, you get to rep 5 with 405 pounds on your back, trying to get a set of 8. You can't breathe. You really, well, you can, but like it's harder. It's harder. You do not want to do another 3 reps, but being in the gym that long, I've developed that mental toughness to be able to push myself through those last 3 reps, and the reward you get and the confidence boost you get from being able to achieve that, and oftentimes for me easier than I expected it to be, is definitely also much higher. So I mean, just getting here day to day and doing what you can today and taking what your own mental health gives you on that day and just doing what you can is automatically going to see increases. And I think that's huge, because like I said, when I first started, everything was just in the can. And I don't think 2 years ago I would have been able to force myself through any really sets of 8 or 10 with anything that was whatever point I was at heavy at that time. So I mean, I think that's definitely huge on that, and we can get a little more cheerier and talk about the mental aspects of like competing too, and what that
I want to touch on one point before we progress to that too. So obviously talking all on the depressy things, going into that too, obviously with training, that's where that whole like motivation, discipline over motivation comes in and all that stuff. And yeah, you're not going to have the motivation to train. Like for months, I lacked motivation. Sometimes I even lack discipline. But when it comes down to it, yeah, maintaining that discipline, just knowing that it's like, heck, most of the time when people go to therapy, they truly don't want to go to most of their or at least half their sessions. But they know in the long run it's going to help. Same with this. Same with a lot of other aspects of bettering yourself. Then going into the training in itself, lifting angry is
that's actually down there.
Yep, that is that's something that if you need to do it once in a while, cool, get it out of your system. I prefer you do that than go out and punch a random person on the street. Just for that person's safety and for you not to go to jail. But it's so exhausting.
Yeah,
it's hard to progress. And if you tap down and that's what your motivation is your own anger, good luck progressing in the next month or so. Like you're gonna gas yourself. You're going to, even if your recovery and everything is good, which honestly, if you're going in and lifting and you're just pissed, I guarantee you there's some things on the outside of that impact recovery that aren't going well either.
100%.
So that is something that I highly advise against. Yeah, sure, if you want to scream before you pick up the bar, by all means, go for it. Just have a little bit of some decency with people around you.
Yeah.
It's going to throw some people off, not going to lie. But when you're just going in and you're just mad and you have just like this disregard for people around you and you just want to slam things around and whatnot, just go outside, cool off, come back in, do it with a calmer head. Like, no one wants to see that. You're making people around you feel uncomfortable, and you're doing yourself a disservice by training like that.
Not only is anger exhausting, where you're gonna gash yourself a lot sooner because I don't know, but I'm sure there's a lot more neurological things going on why anger is exhausting and why you won't be able to do what you need to. Cause
you're using your glycogen stores like that too.
The other thing is anger is blinding, and so if you're going in trying to lift angry, half the time you're not going to focus on your form. You're just going to focus on doing it, and that's going to lead to more injuries too.
And that's going to piss you off even more.
Yeah, that's the other thing. If you get injured trying to do something while you're mad, you're just going to get even more mad because you injured yourself. And then you're going to be mad that you're mad, and it's just a vicious cycle. It's not worth it. And I've tried a couple different things. I mean, I've tried to lift happy. I've lifted angry a couple times. Happy is okay. It's just a little harder because you can't really. I don't know.
Just see you skipping around.
It's nice because I mean, happy often also equates to confident, but at the same time, what I've found is, and this is, I don't know if it's cringy or a little cliche, but like there's so many people that talk about it, finding that point before you go into a lift of just the void, where you can go in and you are so hyper focused on what you're doing. You know exactly what you're doing. You can allow just the void to consume what you're doing and almost just kind of go dark, where the only thing you're thinking about is the weight on your back and standing up. And I think that, one, you're not mad. You're just there. You're fully present. You might be, I know some people talk about entering the void because they get, pull on all these really depressive episodes in their life and they get actually sad and all this stuff. But at the same time, you don't necessarily have to. By any means, you can just enter this space where the only thing that matters is what you're doing. And I think that is much, at least for me, it is much more worthwhile in your lifts. Now, it's also very difficult to actually get into that headspace.
Absolutely. You care if I change the description to the void by chance?
Sure,
okay.
I mean,
so
any other better way to
explain
it is just the void.
Your LMHPs, your licensed mental health practitioners, would call that mindfulness. They would call that mindfulness for the fact that you are focusing on one thing. You are not focusing on the thoughts that are going through your head or anything. You're taking your attention away from something that's bothering you and you're redirecting it. And that is literally what mindfulness is. So going into this void is essentially being mindful of the weight, which I promote quite a bit amongst my athletes and clients, is be mindful of what you're doing. Take time to expose yourself to the feeling of the bar in your hands, your feet on the ground. I like to promote a lot of rooting, so taking your shoes off, feeling the exertion of force amongst different parts of your feet before the lift and during the lift. And people come in and they think just the force exertion of itself, it's going to be enough to help relax or help take your mind off things, which it could. Yeah, the feeling of that tension development, of maybe the pain that you feel and stuff, can take your focus away from whatever may be bothering you. But when you get to the point where you can do that on your own and practice that constantly, that's going to have so many fucking benefits for you in the long run. It's going to teach you to be more disciplined with your lifts too. Heck, I suck at doing meditations, and that's what basically meditation is mindfulness. But taking that meditation aspect of mindfulness and applying it to coming in here to the gym, you'll see a lot better. I wouldn't say truly results, depending if that discipline is really like a good change, then yes, you'll see some better results just with the overall discipline with your technique, your setup, maybe load selection, whatever you decided, whatever changes due to that mindfulness. But you'll see yourself you're alleviating something that's stressing you out for longer periods of time. And that's taking you out of maybe that flight or flight that you're in, and all that energy that you're actually burning just being in that state redirects it. and it's quite beneficial. So think about that next time you go in and you're stressed out or anything. Try to be truly like mindful, or go into the void, but it's just a hyper fixation of something that is not basically in your head. You're focusing on, it's primarily external, environmental type of awareness. So yeah.
Definitely a much easier way to explain it.
Yep.
Fair enough. Yeah, now we can circle back around a little bit to like, mental aspects of competing and like just kind of what should be going through your head during a meet versus how you need to, be mentally tough to put yourself through a meet too, because you're competing all three lifts at incredibly taxing percentages in one day. And so, I mean, for me at least, there's a couple different ways I handle it. I mean, I try and go in happier, or at least feeling good that day, and knowing how I feel, and just going to take what I want is not always going to happen. Just taking what's there that day definitely helps. Yeah, I don't. I'm trying to decide what else to say, but I don't know if you have anything to add. I'm thinking
for competition day, going in and how you should feel. I think, well, if it's your first one, for starters, if it's your first one, just focus on yourself. Obviously, you want to win, you want to do best in your weight class. Heck, you might be the only one in your weight class, so don't even worry about it at that point. But just do the best that you can do. Let yourself get exposed to the anxiety, to the stress, to the excitement, to the curiosity that you have while going through the warm-ups in the warm-up room, depending on how it's set up. Just getting in line, looking at how depending on what kind of format they're using, primarily for USAPL, it's going to be lifting cast, learning how to kind of look through that, be fluent in that as well. Obviously, the coach, if they're doing a good job, they'll have quite a bit of control over communication with you and directing you where you should be, but doesn't mean that you shouldn't allow yourself the ability to be independent too. So just putting that into mind, but you're going to experience a lot of things, and you honestly trying to focus. If you can put all this to the side, like the anxiety, the stress, all that, and you're just like, I want to win and all that good stuff. Good. If you've been training for a while and you're going in with some solid numbers and you win, awesome. But that shouldn't be your goal. That could be your goal for the next meet. That can be your goal for the meets following, is to do the best in your weight class or overall. And obviously, you'll hear a lot of people with powerlifting, you're just competing against yourself. And it's like, yeah, well, that's the same thing too with like, you're competing against others. You really are. And yeah, you're competing against yourself on what you can put up from what you've done previously, but you're wanting to do those too against others with what they're doing. And coming back to it, it's just an individual sport. You're competing against others. It's like wrestling. It's like track and field. It's like combat sports. Everything's split up weight class wise, and then maybe even further subcategories to that. But it's literally just you competing against everybody else. And that's why going into that as well, I'm not the biggest. I like teams. I like teams going into powerlifting a little bit. I like the concept of having that mutual like camaraderie amongst people, whatever. But it seems to be a little toxic too. People will just stick with their team and think it's them against everyone else as well. It's like, yeah, you're competing against individually. You're competing against your team individually.
Yeah.
And if you guys are willing to support each other in that regard, and you aren't supporting the next lifter that's outside of that team, I don't see you applauding for them or anything. Then yeah, you have some things to change. But so it's like there is that concept. If you're willing to be in this little close-knit group, and with us, we have a team here. If I were to see any of that occur, you best believe I'm going to be applauding for every person that goes up there and gets a medal, Absolutely. Part of the team or not.
Yeah.
But if I see anyone of, like, say, our athletes doing that, I'd be like, hey, try to be a little bit more supportive. Or if they're in a bad headspace and they're just mad with how they did, and that's fine. But just, I don't know, give support, because sometimes those people that went in and are just competing by themselves, they might not even have anyone there to really cheer them on either. So be that person to cheer them on.
Yeah.
So
For sure.
kind of went off in a random ass direction with that one.
Yeah, you know, that's what makes podcasts good, because then
So,
it's at least real.
Yeah.
And
But
there's more stuff to talk about. I mean, other than that, I mean, at meets, half the time, you're going to be so excited, your adrenaline's going to be so high that, honestly, I don't even worry about missing. I mean, I do worry about missing a certain lift, but at the same time, your adrenaline is so high, until it wears off, half the time you are going to be alert and awake and ready to go.
Oh yeah. And you won't feel that truly in the weight room or anything, but once you're like, even like, once you're sitting behind the curtain or wherever, however they have it set up, whatever, you're 5 out, 4 out, 3 out. That's going to build. It's going to build. You're in the hole, and then you're on deck. That's when that anxiety, that adrenaline, anxiety, stress, excitement, all that's just going to come in, and you wind up not actually thinking about a whole lot besides going up there and lifting that weight. And that's where I think the practice of mindfulness comes in quite a bit, because then you're just you have this whole environment of stimulus around you, but being able to redirect your focus to that one bit of stimulus, that weight that needs to be lifted, is quite a skill.
Yeah,
so
for sure. I guess I don't know how long we've been going. I really hope my phone's still recording.
It's 11:08.
We're probably getting close to an hour, I'd bet. I guess we can probably didn't touch on all the topics, but I mean, at the same time, we have, I don't know how many more episodes of podcasts I want to do.
Yeah.
For a long time, so we can always touch on them later. I think what I want to end with is probably just maybe something more fun, like in your lifting journey. You and I can share stories back and forth on where exactly you started. Like I can start, back when I was 16, maybe some of your favorite gym stories, some gym horror stories, and then like your first meet experience, and then like if you have any like meet rituals. So for me, I can get started real quick on like my journey to now. I was 15, 16. I went and got a regular checkup at the doctor. I was really short. I was like 5'2",
You were kind of
5'3"
short
at the time. I'm still short, I know. But I was like 5'2", 5'3" at the time, and I was 15 years old, and I stepped on the scale, and it was 199 pounds. And I looked at that, and I'm like, that's not going to say 200. I do not want that to say 200. And so I had no idea what diet was. I just had an idea what training was. And so I went home, and for the next, 3 years, I think, started out with just running a mile. Eventually I pushed it to 2. Eventually I was running 3 miles a day with random 4-milers thrown in. And I don't think I missed a day of running unless we were on vacation. I was doing something entirely for all 3 years. And so I think for 3 years, I was running anywhere between 18 to like 25, 26 so miles a week. And that's where mine started. And then it got to a point where I'd taken a lifting class like my freshman year of high school. And it got to a point where I'm like, you know what if I just added this in with it? And so I started lifting, I don't remember if it was 6 or 7. I was 16 and I'm getting old, and that was 8 years ago. But I think after 6 months, maybe even a year of just running, I asked my dad if we could put a weight bench in the garage. And I went with my own money at the time because I had a job. I bought a bar, bought some weights, I bought like some loadable dumbbells, and just started doing what I could in the garage along with running. So I was still running, those average 20 miles a week and lifting 6 or 7 days a week along with it. And so by the time I got to my senior year of high school, I kept doing it throughout. By the time I got to like January, February, and I hadn't stepped on a scale at this point at all until I got to a weight training class my senior year, second semester, and I stepped on that scale and it showed 161. And I had lost 40 pounds, and then that was 2 years. And then, again, I hope Skylar can throw a picture of it. I can throw a picture of what I looked like at 160 pounds.
Yeah.
I've shown you before.
Yeah.
It's really funny. Anyway, so that was that was me at 18. And then from then, it just kind of took off where I came to college. Running was not necessarily put on the back burner, but it was a little more difficult because I was used to, I'm from a small town out in, I wouldn't say the middle of bumfuck nowhere, but no one knows the town name. It's Panama, Nebraska.
I'm
And
familiar with it.
I was just running the section, and
Yeah.
Hannah was in the middle of one, so it came out to like my half of the section was 3 miles.
Okay.
And that's primarily what I was doing at the time. So when I came to college, I had no idea where to run.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just utilized the rec center and started doing that instead. Started getting more into that, and then yeah, I was lifting in the rec for 2 years, 3 years, and then gosh, I'm trying to remember too what really happened. I got into biking instead. I started biking more than I was lifting. Biked across Iowa. That was fun. And by the time, so I went into college 165 when I was 18. I put on a little more muscle, maybe eating a little more, and then by the time I left my junior year, I was 185, and it was quite lean. It was fun, but like I was maybe lifting 5 days a week and biking primarily. So I mean, I wasn't putting on any weight. And then around that time, COVID hit. I broke up with my ex, and I started dating my now fiance, and she and I, like, no fault of her by any means. It's a new relationship. You go out more often. You stay and you sit down and watch TV instead. So and with COVID too, it was really difficult. You couldn't go to the gym, especially at the rec, and it had 45-minute time limits, which was terrible. And so I stopped doing almost anything. And by the end of COVID, I was about 200 pounds, and I was really mad about that because for the longest time that was what I didn't want. And then I don't know. From then, I just kind of took lifting more seriously. Running was on the back burner. I wasn't even powerlifting at that time. I was just watching weights increase. And gosh, yeah, just kind of just lifting, watching weights increase, and then my powerlifting started. I just bought Jamal Browner has like a program template that he puts out. I started that in like February or March of 22 or something like that, and then someone finally convinced me to compete at that point, because I mean my numbers weren't what I wanted, but they said like you just should have some fun with it, and I messaged you in May, and then yeah, just been powerlifting since then. And so it was a really long-winded story. Sorry.
It was. Wow.
I was like, there's a lot in there, and I go every which way at once. So,
do you even breathe?
No, yeah. I don't know. That was how I went in a really long-winded story.
Yeah,
probably could have been condensed a little bit. But
no, it's a story, man. It's a length of what it needs to be. My journey. Oh boy. So I did lift once in a while when I was in high school. Obviously, there was the strength and conditioning aspect to track and field. Never stuck through it a whole lot. And my personal defense, I was a little bit of a delinquent too, so lifting was not what was really seen as the most important thing for me at that time. And graduating high school, kind of had some life events that happened that really kind of put some things in perspective for me. Family issues, my own kind of delinquency also. It really, I needed an outlet. And I needed it like quick. And that outlet actually started off being running. I would run a couple miles every other day, so almost every day. And then those couple miles turned into 8 miles. They turned into 10 miles. And I was just running. And you could say I was probably just running away from my problems. But I was actually running as well. So it gave me a lot of headspace that I truly needed at that time. I did a lot of 5, 10Ks. I did one half marathon. And after that half marathon, well, going back, when I was training for this half marathon, I was also starting really getting into resistance training back again. So this is that 21 to 22, no, 21-ish, 2021 time frame. And I noticed that I was like, I wanted to have those lifts go up. I wanted to maintain the endurance aspect too that I was doing with running. And it got to the point where I had to pick one or the other because my resistance training, the performance with that and everything was stalling. It was plateauing after a couple months, especially with all the endurance training I was doing, which makes sense. That's going to happen. And I kind of used it as an ultimatum after my half marathon. I was like, well, now I'm going to really start lifting. And I remember seeing this one kid I started at Good Life, and um, there was this one kid. He was pulling quite a bit of weight. And he was a scrawny dude too. He was probably just like 10, 15 pounds more than me. And this guy was just repping out like 550 for deadlifts. And I'm just like standing there in awe. Like I asked this guy so many questions. I probably got to the point where I was borderline annoying. But seeing him do that really, I don't know, it was just seeing that one guy be stronger than what he looked. And that kind of factor of having someone look at you, not expect much, and then you just blow their expectations straight out of the water. That appealed so much to me. And that made me feel like that just sounded like something I wanted to do. And from there, I started kind of diving into how to program, teaching myself, and all this. And no, this is also before I started my undergrad too. I didn't start going back to school till I was like 21, 22. And so diving into a lot of that, started training, and then I started going to school, got some general education out of the way, and just all of this started simultaneously progressing. And I did get coaching for a little bit, then realized it wasn't really truly what I needed because I was just obsessed with my own training so much to where I was confident. I was confident that I could get myself where I needed to go, and then it winded up others as well. And that kind of just, yeah, that was more of a short and condensed story on my journey. But diving back into kind of like my journey as well, there was a lot of, and still is, some mental health things that rear their ugly head. And this is probably I wish I would have done sports when I was younger, maybe as a better outlet, but I just wasn't really ever pushed to do so or anything like that. And on my own, I just didn't have the urge to. Looking at how much doing this type of stuff really impacts me is tremendous. It's just fucking amazing. I don't know where I'd be without lifting, without powerlifting, without learning about how sports performance, the anatomy, kinesiology, whatever, the biomechanics, all that with performance in the human body, learning all that and applying it and basically living it day in and day out has given me like a purpose. And that's sometimes all you really just need. And that's also, I think, one really cool aspect about resistance training, coming to the gym or doing whatever, wherever your training is done, just doing it. If you don't have one, which a lot of people don't, it gives you a reasonable purpose. It gives you a healthy purpose. It gives you a purpose that you can build and build and build on. And that is something that I am truly thankful for in regards to that. So.
Well, that was really profound, and I don't know if I want to follow it with anything. So we might just go ahead and end it right there. I think we're over an hour at this point, too.
Yeah,
so
we totally are.
I definitely think this one was a good one. Touching a lot more on like the training side of things versus just normal day-to-day fun stuff that we do in our lives. But it's a gym podcast, so it's not always just going to be about fun stuff. And I definitely think there was a lot of intelligent conversation within this one that we'll have some good clips out of too that we can throw up and give Skylar a lot to look through. But that's his job.
And I hope that the people that listen to these kind of they have some takeaway. I hope there is some takeaway for you guys, because at the end of the day, this place is that's what we're trying to create, is more of a space of an outlet, a place of education, and just overall development. And that is something that these podcasts too in themselves can hopefully provide, with also not always continually being educational and this deep dive into all these really deep, somewhat sensitive topics. But it's kind of like carrying on daily conversations that you would have normally and just bringing it out in the face of an audience. So
yeah. I don't really think I have anything else. Again, he's more profound than me apparently. I felt it's a pretty good ending.
I'm a part-time philosopher. If you
Oh,
haven't
yeah.
noticed.
He's older. He has more experiences anyway.
Still make that. No, it's 3 years, bud.
Hey,
Not even.
that's
It's
enough.
like 2.
You've been through worse than I have.
Fair enough. But
yeah, I think that'll probably wrap it up for today. Hopefully you guys enjoy these. Like I said, we'll get into maybe a couple other things that, because I know you guys have sent in a couple DMs, but we went off on a couple tangents and kept talking for a while. So we'll get into everything, and hopefully you guys keep sending us those DMs on stuff you want to talk about. The longer we're doing this, we can have different people on. We unfortunately only have 2 mics at this time, so unless we can figure out if they work from out here and we can, have 3-4 people here at a time, then it might just be 2 of us, and we'll probably go back and forth on if it's me and Skylar or me and Matt or Skylar and someone or me and someone else or however it wants to be. But we'll get it figured out, and hopefully you guys have some good takeaways from this one, like Matt said. Yeah, so we appreciate you listening, especially if you made it this far. Hopefully we'll be able to take some good clips from this to, put up and have these profound statements in a much shorter time frame than just watching podcasts. But if you're like me and you go on walks listening to podcasts, or you do it while you're biking or while you're sitting at home doing nothing.
I know my voice is also quite sensual too, so that might just kind of help pass the time.
I think that's just the mustache.
Oh, yeah.
But I think that'll about wrap it up for today, guys. So thanks for watching. Matt, thanks for being here.
Of course.
That'll do it. So I'm Josh. This is Matt.
Howdy.
If you have any training questions, coaching needs, anything like that, you want personal training sessions, find Matt, and that'll about do it. So again, thank you. This is, I'm gonna get it right this time. It's Caffeine, Carbs, and Kilos. Here we go.
Until we get a cease and desist for that.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting day. But yeah, Caffeine, Carbs, and Kilos. Let us know if you have any questions, DM us content ideas, anything like that. We're out. So thank you guys.
Peace out.